I'll let you know when it's doing it. Okay, we are live. So, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of What's the Tea? As some of you may know, February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So, we'll get a little bit into that. For those of you who are new and maybe haven't seen SSFS What's the Tea, we are live or pre-recorded every Tuesday at 2 p.m. And so usually what we do is we interview somebody from the agency or somebody who works somehow with our community here in the agency. And we talk about what they do or always different topics. So join us every Tuesday. We'll be here. We'll have a different tea, but it's always at the same time and the same place here on Facebook. So today we're going to be talking a little bit on the topic of teen dating violence, since we're kicking off Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So my name is Celeste.
And I am Zach, also on the community education team at South Suburban Family Shelter.
And yeah, so I'll go ahead and go ahead. Go ahead, Zach. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if you wanted to get us started, because typically we do teen dating violence presentations in schools, but it's going to be a little bit shorter today. So did you want to kick us off and let everyone know what that even is? What's the definition?
Yeah, sure. So like Zach said, what we usually do is we go to schools and do presentations. Now for teens, we usually do a presentation called TDV, Teen Dating Violence. And we'll talk about the importance of these presentations as well. But just to give a brief definition of teen dating violence, it's a pattern of abusive behaviors used by one person to maintain power and control over another person within a teen dating relationship. And so February is National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. So this is a national effort dedicated to raise awareness about the issue of teen dating violence, and it focuses on advocacy and education to stop dating abuse before it starts. So let's get into some of the stats here, Zach, because a lot of people may think that teen dating violence is not that common, but it actually is, unfortunately, very common because it can happen to anyone, regardless of their age, financial status, race, gender, sexual orientation, or background. So we often see this happening even when we go to schools and present. We often meet teenagers who do come to us and tell us that they already are in an abusive relationship. So if you can go ahead and talk about some of those stats.
Sure. As you said, it's unexpected, at least for me. So one stat is 1.5 million teens went through some form of dating violence, and that was pulled a couple of years back, but 1.5 million is a huge chunk. I don't know how many high schoolers there are total, but that's got to be a large percentage of them. And then another statistic was 43% of teens had gone through some kind of physical abuse. And we know that there's more than just physical abuse, not just with teen dating violence, but also in domestic violence in general, which sometimes people don't even know. Teens especially, may not even recognize the signs of abuse, whether it's happening to a friend or to themselves. So physical violence was 43%. And also 1 in 3 teens will experience some type of abuse, and that can include emotional abuse or other types of abuse as well. It can include sexual abuse as well. So those are huge numbers, 1.5 million. So it's definitely something, worth dedicating a lot of our time to, and dedicating the month for awareness purposes. I would be wearing orange for it, but I only have one orange shirt and I need to wear it for next week. So that's why I'm not wearing it right now. I don't want to wear it twice in a row. But yeah, so huge numbers. And I guess a good place to go from here, I think, would be to talk about, do you want to talk about some of the types of abuse? And
Sure. I would like to point out, though, that it's a little bit iffy when we do talk about stats. And this is something that sometimes we even tell the students that we present to, because a stat could say this, but really, do we really know the perfect amount of people or teens who have experienced teen dating violence, when a lot of them don't disclose it? A lot of them don't tell anyone. So this number could be even larger than what we think it is. So I think that's something important to point out, that it's important for somebody to have that special someone that they feel comfortable talking to. But yeah, when we do say these stat, when we do say, you know, the 43% of teens have experienced this, what we mean is they've experienced one of these four, or maybe all four types of abuse. So we have physical abuse, which is basically harming somebody's body. We have emotional abuse, so hurting somebody's feelings, and this could be done in a lot of different ways. We also see sexual abuse with teen dating violence. Sometimes people could be pressured into having sex, especially in the high school age. And then another one that is very, very common amongst high school kids is property abuse. So we see this a lot in high schools, and some examples can be, you know, breaking somebody's phones if they're already driving to school, slashing their tires, keying their car, things like that. So anything that belongs to that student or that teenager, and then damaging that property. So they use this property abuse in order to get power and control over the other person. So this is another tactic that they use.
Yeah, and with those, they're very similar to adult relationships. And I think that that's one common theme we'll keep on touching on here, where if you think about it, I'm just thinking back to my high school, you know, a lot of people, they start dating in high school and then they just end up together permanently. And a lot of times that's a really good thing. But if you start picking up those abusive patterns early and you end up staying with that person, then it just transitions into adulthood without any change.
Yeah, and exactly. It could be hard to realize when a healthy relationship goes and turns into an unhealthy relationship, because it doesn't happen from one day to another. It happens slowly. And sometimes without you even noticing what happened, but until you realize you're in this situation. So this could be even more difficult for teens, where they're barely learning what a relationship is. And who are they to say this isn't just what relationships are and what they do? So it could be even more confusing for teens who are barely going into dating, haven't dated before, don't really know what to expect. And then some of these things happen and they don't really know what it is that's happening. So again, that's why it's important to get this education out to them, because you know they need to recognize those warning signs. They need to realize what is going on before they get too deep into this, where it's even harder to get out. So let's talk about that, Zach. Let's talk about some of those key elements to a healthy relationship. And for those of you who are listening, feel free to comment. What do you think is important? What do you think are some key elements in a healthy relationship? So what do you think those are for you, Zach?
Sure. And sometimes it's harder to explain what's healthy than it is to explain what's unhealthy. Like when we see physical abuse, we clearly know that's that's not a good thing. Very obvious. And I'll give a few. This is not an exhaustive list. These aren't all the ones in the world. We always tell the kids that. Sometimes you'll have to infer a little bit and make decisions on your own. So like an obvious one is respect. That's that's one that we talk about in prevention with K through 12, but also in our bro group with boys. Um, if you respect someone, you're not going to abuse them. It's very straightforward. Another
Exactly.
one would be a dialogue or communication. So, and then the opposite of that, a lot of times, is obviously lying in a relationship can be a form of abuse if you're using that, um, you know, to manipulate the way someone thinks, or um, a whole number of ways, really. So that would be another one. And I want to talk about boundaries as well. So, especially with teens, it's important to set those up early in a relationship. I think if you don't set those up, then that can be the start of abuse. Really, if no one has boundaries, you know, teens really get attached to each other, and it's important to make sure everyone's on the same page and everyone knows what's going on. and to speak up if something is happening that you're uncomfortable with. And I don't want to just keep rattling them all off, but an interesting one is self-esteem. So I know
Let's
we're
hope
talking about two people, but um, someone that has low self-esteem, especially in teenage years, it could you can internalize messages, abusive messages, emotional abuse. You internalize that more when you have low self-esteem because you start to believe it. You already believe, you know, maybe you're inadequate in some way. That's what you're telling yourself, and then someone else says it, and then you really start to believe it. So it is important to, um, make sure you think highly of yourself. Otherwise, maybe someone else
yeah.
may not either.
Conversation that Exactly. The conversation that you and I were having is like know your worth, right?
Mhm.
And that's what we want to focus on is that we want teens to know their worth. And so having high self-esteem makes you less likely to be in an abusive relationship. So high self-esteem actually makes a person less likely to be abused, and it makes a person less likely to be abusive in a relationship. So it goes both ways. It actually helps with so many things. So a person should definitely learn their worth and know their worth before they even go into any type of dating relationship. So I like all these that you mentioned: respect, you mentioned trust, communication, boundaries, and then self-esteem. So one that we're going to talk about in our next week's episode that you all will have to wait and listen about is consent. That's also one of the key factors in a healthy relationship. And I would like to mention that there are no two relationships alike. So whatever is a healthy factor for you could be different from your partner or your friend. So I think that's something really important to mention.
Yeah, and on the topic of consent, um, another like opposite of that would be coercion, which is forcing someone to do something, and it really gets into the emotional abuse. So for teens, some examples, it could be threats. You're threatening someone. It could be intimidation. It could be name calling. It could be isolating them from their friends, or um, isolating them like emotionally from their friends, like picking on them or trying to get their friends to, uh, you know, not like them, something along those lines. So that's included as well.
So moving on to warning signs, and I hope we're getting some good comments in the comment section here because, like Zach said, we're not going to mention every single thing. I'm sure there's more. So if you all have some ideas on what do you think some warning signs are that someone or a friend of yours or someone you know might be in an abusive relationship? And then also, what are some warning signs where a teen can realize, oh, this relationship is not healthy? What are some of those first things that happen to get you to realize that this isn't on a healthy track? So let's talk about that, Zach. Some warning signs for me, I think, could be, especially amongst high school students or teenagers. I think what happens a lot is checking your phones without permission, maybe putting you down frequently, especially in front of others. Isolation is a big one. If you notice that the person that you're dating isn't wanting you to be around your friends or family as much. And then extreme jealousy and insecurity. So, jealousy and insecurity could be normal, but we're talking extreme here. So when you do realize that your partner is extremely jealous, that could be an issue. Explosive outbursts, temper or mood swings, or any form of physical harm, of course, is not right. And then, like we talked about, sexual abuse, pressuring or forcing you to have sex is also an issue.
Yeah, and I think we're circling around one issue with these types of abuse is that of technology, and a lot of these types of abuse can intersect with technology, and we want to do a whole episode on this topic in the future. But I will just mention that it's very common whenever we go into schools. A lot of times the teachers would like us to actually talk about tech even more because this is where a lot of it's happening. Of course, you live with your parents when you're a teenager, so you're not always with that person you're dating. Um, and everyone's on different social media apps where you can really ridicule someone and You could blackmail someone, unfortunately. You could post pictures of people without them knowing that you took them, or sharing them um, without permission. So a lot of these behaviors also extend to technology, so they can be happening after school on the weekends as well. But nonetheless, it is serious. Just because it's happening online doesn't mean someone's not going to be severely affected by it. So always something to look out for, um, especially as these things keep developing, and tracking which apps people are using and everything like that. It's good to be on the same page.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's say that you realize that somebody that you know could be in an abusive relationship. It could be difficult. It could be difficult to realize or to figure out what you're going to do about it. And I know this happened to me when I was in high school. I had a couple of friends who were in abusive relationships. And honestly, I just didn't know what to do. If I knew then what I have learned now here in this agency, I would have been able to help them a little bit more. So let's talk about what you can do if you realize that one of your friends is in an abusive relationship.
Sure.
Do you want to go ahead and cover that, or should I?
Yeah, I'll see how I can see if I can help here. So one I would say is to not cut your friend off. I think, as we mentioned, isolation is common with these kinds of relationships. So thinking teen wise, maybe you were friends with someone for a couple of years and then they start dating someone, and then they kind of cut you out of their life a little bit. But you can, maybe if you suspect that it's due to relationship violence, then um, being a little bit open-minded about their situation, and they may be caught up in something without even realizing it. So make sure you stay their friend. You're available to speak with them. You let them know that you're telling them what you see, because someone who's in that relationship doesn't have um, as much insight maybe as you do from the outside. So definitely keep those things in mind. Offer to help them find resources. We'll link a few resources for them to get help. And which ones am I missing?
I think, I mean, it depends on the situation. So this could go so many ways, but I think you just about covered it, because basically just talk to them and don't show any judgment, right? Don't be judgmental, and make sure that they know you're there to talk whatever they want to talk about. I think just believing them is the first step, right? Because sometimes people minimize, or, especially when this person came out to you and is telling you something that was difficult for them to say, first of all. So just believing what they're saying is definitely very important. And I also want to talk about, as an adult, realizing that whether you're a teacher or a parent or whatever it is, as an adult, realizing that this teenager might be in an abusive relationship, that can be difficult. That can be difficult also to think about how you're going to respond. So I'd say my tips would be just to learn the warning signs of how abusive relationships start. And then, and like you said, Zach, find those resources and know what to give these students when they do need help. But also to have that conversation. It could be difficult to have a conversation, but go ahead and ask what's going on. Is there a problem? Is everything okay? Believing them, don't jump to conclusions and suggestions. And then also, when you do try and figure out a solution, make sure that that teenager is involved with the solution, because we adults, we're quick to solve children's problems and tell them this is exactly what you should do, but you're not helping someone by telling them this is what you need to do. You're helping someone if you help them help themselves, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, if you just solve the problem for them, they're likely to fall into it again, right? So they need to, um, you know, kind
Be a
of,
part of that solution.
yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Especially, you might be the first person that they ever told about this situation. And, it's important to be able to react the right way and give them the right support.
Yeah, and it's important to know it could be I don't know if we mentioned this, but it could be just as dangerous as adult violent relationships. You know, unfortunately, people can die from these kinds of relationships, and it can get very serious too. So, um, a lot of times it is good to get an adult involved, especially depending on the severity of it. I think that's one thing teens necessarily don't realize when we first start talking with them. They think, you know, maybe I've seen this or that in school and it's all not that serious, but you know, it's not serious until it is, right? And
Exactly.
then it's really important that you know someone to turn to, and you know the facts about what's happening, and you know how to recognize the signs. And you know, people at schools are always helpful as well. Everyone who works at a school is a mandated reporter. Sometimes you need their support as well. With the school, maybe you need to change your locker or your class schedule because um, the person you were in a relationship with, um, you're crossing paths way too often, and it's not safe for you to do so. So always remember those trusted adults as well.
Exactly. So let's move on to the teen services and rights. What services do we offer for teens? What can they get here at South Suburban Family Shelter?
So they can, if they're between 12 and 17, they are able to get a limited amount of counseling sessions for free without their parents. Now, of course, as we just mentioned, with teen dating violence, it's good to have parents involved. So, um, although that is a better step than doing nothing, it is good to keep that line of communication open with adults in your life if that is something you do want to seek out. We do help with that for a limited time. Also, you know, they can always call the hotline, which we can plug in at the bottom. And also, in Illinois, you can get an order of protection as a minor, and that's perfectly fine. That is something you can do if it does escalate to that level, and get the courts involved as well. So someone is legally not able to get near you.
So just to piggyback a little bit there, when you said, it's important to mention orders of protection are definitely here in Illinois, a minor can also get an order of protection. And then for counseling, I did speak with the manager here of our counseling department, and she says that the law allows children ages 12 to 17 up to 8 sessions, 8 90-minute sessions without parental consent. So you can get counseling, without parental consent, but we do recommend that parents should be involved just because the more people are involved is kind of like a holistic approach. It's more, you get more benefits from when you have your parents involved. But it definitely is, you'll be able to get counseling here at South Suburban Family Shelter.
Yeah, and I think that goes the same with if you're a teen and there's violence in your house and it's not even necessarily your relationship, that's an option as well. So we do have those options available, and um, you know, schools mostly they usually have at least either a social worker or a counselor who can help navigate that process for them as well.
Exactly. And I do want to emphasize what we already briefly covered a little bit, just that everyone has the right to be safe. So all these rights that teenagers have, you have the right to counseling, you have the right to get an order of protection. Everyone has the right to be safe. So just by knowing your worth and knowing your rights, everyone definitely has the right to be in a healthy and respectable relationship. So what can we do to help, Zach? What can we do as adults? What can we do as advocates to help? I know we mentioned stats, right? So we talked about this is another stat: 1 in 3 teens experiencing some form of relationship abuse, but only 2/3 of them, actually 2/3 of them never tell anyone. So we have to do more to bring awareness to dating violence. So some of the things that I think we could do is just start talking about the issue, because sometimes people think it's a private matter, but it isn't a private issue. We must come together and support each other. So just by, mentioning to someone who you think might be in an abusive relationship that you're there for them and that they're not alone can be helpful in itself.
Yeah, and I think it's a common theme sometimes that adults don't talk with their kids about things like dating, because it can be, I guess it can be an awkward topic of conversation. But if you just ignore it, then you're leaving it up to whatever they learn at school or they're watching on TV or on their phone, and then um, they have no default to fall back. And you know then once no conversation has ever happened, it's hard to then turn back to that adult and just you be the one to start that conversation as a teen, which I would recommend doing. But it's always easier if the adult is the first one to start that conversation.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because that conversation could be hard both ways. But it's definitely up to the adults to try and have that conversation. But like you mentioned, if we don't have that conversation with our children, if we don't teach our children what these relationships should look like, we're depending on the media and social media and television and music to tell our children what relationships should look like. And I don't know what a good impression that will do.
Yeah, absolutely. And leading by example is always helpful. The relationships that kids do see growing up, as we know, if someone grows up in an abusive household, the chances that they fall into a relationship similar than that are very high. So they do pick up on things, even when you're not telling them directly as well.
Yeah. And then another thing I really want to emphasize here as a community educator, we're both here community educators. And I think that one of the first steps that we can do is just get that right information in front of these children, in front of these young people. So teach them about what a healthy relationship looks like, and then how to recognize those warning signs of abuse. And again, that's something that we do focus on for our presentations. And we will have our email addresses in the comments here. So if anybody watching is interested in having us present to your schools, we are currently presenting virtually. We're going to consider doing in person now, and we have pre-recorded presentations. So whatever suits you and your schedule, we're definitely willing to be in your schools, and we want to spread the word, especially for this month, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So should we go on to the comments, Zach?
Yeah, let's see if we got any good questions for us.
Let's see what we have. So we have Angela here, in charge of technology and questions. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to comment your questions below. You still have time, but let's see if we have any questions so far or comments. Angela.
Hi, at this time, there are no questions, but you all do have a lot of comments from our viewers speaking on not only their personal experience, but we have individuals who were given examples of what unhealthy relationships, unhealthy aspects in a relationship. Some even say play fighting can really, get into the unhealthy aspect, as well as controlling who you are, verbal abuse, financial abuse. We also have someone that explained in here that in high school, in the late 80s, they didn't learn about healthy relationships or about abuse, just from what they've seen in retrospect from family or friends. So they were stating that they wish they had access to this kind of education at the time. So again, not a lot of questions, no questions, actually just a lot of comments, which, is nice to see.
Definitely nice to see. I was encouraging all these comments. So please leave more comments. We're looking forward to reading all these comments. But, this is something that is, I guess, new in a way, this type of education. It hasn't always been there. And I'm glad that it is, because I definitely see the difference that we are making in children's lives, especially for those who see us back to back every year. But even like Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month was not nationally recognized until I believe it was the year 2010. So it hasn't been that long. So we need to spread the word, and we need to, get information out there as fast as possible, because, you know, the sooner we can get this information to the teenagers and to our youth, the better results we'll have.
Yeah, and it really is a year after year kind of thing. That's one thing we strive to do as a program, is to see a lot of the same schools one year into the next, just so, you know, it's not like we have a message and then that was them in 5th grade, and then, you know, who knows what happens for the next 10, 15 years for them. You know, they never see us again. So we do like to kind of repeat this message once per year in the schools, and then it's good to have these initiatives online, like Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, where every February you are reminded of it. You see the color orange. You know, you can stay up to date with the latest research. You can see what people are saying. I like to keep up with loveisrespect.com. They've got a lot of good resources on there. And then from there, I always find new places to go.
We do have a
That's
question that
correct.
says, if schools want to ask for presentations in person, what is the procedure?
So currently in person, we are going to talk about what COVID precautions your school is taking. So that's going to be the first question for sure. But the first thing that you should do is email us. So like I said, our emails are going to be in the comments here. We have 3 community educators, Angela, myself, and Zach. So we'll include all 3 of our emails, and all you have to do is email us and we'll go from there. Yeah. So was that the only question there, Angie?
Yes, sorry. I was just like,
Sorry.
yeah, question. But yes, that is the only question right now.
Okay, great. So I think we've just about covered it. The last thing that I just want to mention is I want to encourage teens to just know, like we talked about self-esteem and the importance of self-esteem, and know that you deserve a healthy relationship no matter what. There's not one person here that doesn't deserve a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. And I'll just close with saying, be aware of what's going on with your friends and everything. You know, are people isolated? Do they have unexplained markings? Are they suddenly anxious and different? You know, is there someone that they're dating, you know, overly possessive? Are they being abused using technology? So lots of things to look out for, but hopefully we laid a few things out, and you could always get a hold of us if you have any more questions or would just like to know more. So with that, I think we can close out, but I do want to let everyone know that next Tuesday, the 9th, is Orange for Love Day. So everyone wear orange. Celeste is already ahead of the curve. The rest of us will be trying to get that initiative going. We would love to see the orange, and let us know in the comments next week that you're wearing them. Take a picture if you would like and show us your orange shirts. But we have a really great episode lined up for next week, which will keep the theme for the entire month of February about teen dating violence. And this is just the introduction. So thanks for being here with us. We'll be here next week, same time and place with different tea.
Yes, so wear orange next Tuesday, everyone. Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.